Yeah. It is 5:31.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then. I'll be filling in for Linda, who's unable to make the meeting tonight. So the first thing we need is an approval of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion, we approve the agenda.
And yes, reminder to everybody to speak into your mics loudly. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Next up, approval of the consent agenda, which was included in your original packet.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Public comments, has anybody signed up? Nope. No public comments, we'll close that section. And move on to reports. First up is mayor's report. The only thing that I have to report is that Pinnacle Park Foundation, we received the preliminary report from Equinox on the mechanical survey of Pinnacle Park. And giving it just sort of an initial read through, I just wanted to report that there was a very high number of rare and unique species, plants, trees, and plant communities and animals found in the park, both on the Pinnacle Park side and the Black Rock side, including some American chestnut trees that were fruiting, actually producing the seed. So we're reviewing that document and providing some feedback to Equinox for their final report, which we do here shortly. That is all I have. We'll move to commissioners' reports and start down here with you, Mary.
I just want to say thank you to the Public Works and to the police department and the fire department and everyone involved in making a very successful parade for Sylva this year. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted, I'll also echo that. Thanks, you guys. That's a huge deal. Everybody's working on Sunday, so went off without a hitch. So thank you all for being out there. As far as reports go, just a reminder that there is a North Carolina Bradford pear bounty. So if you have any Bradford pear trees, the state will pay you to get rid of them and get a new tree to replace it that is non-invasive. So that's out there. If anybody's interested, there's a website, the North Carolina Bradford pear bounty. And also I talked to Paige about this a little bit. I'd like to, so every year we have our budget work sessions. We spend all this time on our budget priorities. But sometimes I think that there are other priorities that don't fall under the budget that might be nice to talk about. So I was thinking we could do just a work session because the work sessions seem to be a little more kind of free flowing than this format. So I'd like to propose that either we tack on a half an hour to the budget work session or have a separate little time where we, talk about things. How are we doing? What do we want to do? What are the priorities for the town that really don't fall under the budget? For example, housing is something that, we desperately want and need. And, a lot of times we don't have, that's not something we can really budget for, but it's something that is a priority. And I think we should talk about. There are other things that might be grant funded that again would not fall under the budget. So I'd like to kind of think about that, and I don't know if I need to Paige, and if you have any thoughts about when it might work out. I don't know if everybody thinks that's an okay idea or how to go about making that happen.
So we have an agenda item to discuss the budget calendar. You wanted to maybe discuss that during that agenda item, and we can see maybe we can squeeze it onto one of those.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
That's great.
I don't really have too much to report, but I am interested in the Bradford pear comment because we have a parking lot full of them across the street from the hotel. So maybe we could make some money. And when is the botanical survey? When will we get that report?
I was thinking the beginning of January. Does that sound right, Paige, for the deadline on it? I'm pretty sure it should be somewhere around.
So.
Can you send me the preliminary? report?
Yeah, I need to send that to you too. I was surprised that did, so yeah, and if you have any feedback, and I can send you sort of, the comments that we came up with this thing for our foundation.
Didn't they talk about an extent, though it might take a little more time because of the maps, kind of some of the things that foundation asked for too. Right, it sounded like it might not be January, they might want to do it, but anyway, so.
That could be, yeah, I can find that out, but you know, yeah.
Well, at any rate, I think that's really good news and I'm happy that we get that. That's all I have to report.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to present to the board something I've been kind of working on in the talks of trying to make happen. That has to do with Bryson Park and the Allen Street project, but mainly Bryson Park. Paige has you guys, I'm sure you guys have seen brick fundraisers. I know I've gone to the zoo down in Columbia, South Carolina, in the park over in Hickory, and they have the bricks where you can purchase a brick and have your name or organization or whatever on that brick. And it's a type of fundraiser where then, you know, anything outside the cost of the brick and installation would be towards whatever project. And so I thought it would be a good idea, if the board is up for us doing this, is to have a brick fundraiser for Bryson Park. So that individuals, families, children's businesses, organizations can kind of get involved, since it's going to be kind of a big project and the park will be completely redone and new equipment and that sort of thing. The idea would be to place these bricks under the covered like pavilion area to kind of increase the longevity. The bricks that I've looked at, they have a lifetime warranty, so you wouldn't have to worry about like replacement or anything like that, but this would just really help to protect them. I imagine, like, you know, down the road, like I'd like to buy some for my kids, and when they're older, they can go down to the park and look for their brick, or, you know, maybe a business that wants to show their support for the community. But what I would need from you guys is kind of a thumbs up to move forward with the fundraiser. I'm willing to take on a lot of the work and kind of helping get the word out there and that sort of thing. Y'all are up for that. Good idea.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great.
And then what I would need from you all is just an account set up where those funds that are raised are allocated to Bryson Park specifically.
We can take care of that accounting piece. That's easy.
Okay. So yeah,
That'd be a separate account, probably. It would just be a line item, and then we'll work with the company to figure out how the payment works.
so like I said, I'd be happy to kind of help get the word out. I hope to announce if everything goes as planned to the community once we have like a groundbreaking on that project kind of set in place. That sort of thing. So.
Would the people that we buy the bricks from, well, I guess they would engrave it, would they install it?
So they don't do the install, but they do all the engraving, and then we would be responsible for installing. You've done those before, Jake.
Yeah,
You've got some.
while we were having all the work done there already, it would be much easier and time effective to have that contract to do it. That won't be an issue.
That's all I have to report. Thank you, guys.
That will conclude our report section. We'll move on to new business. First thing we have is our audit report. Last year, and Harlan will be presenting.
May I do the report?
I'm sorry, missed the manager's report. Most important one.
I wouldn't say
Reports.
I just have a few updates. So the fire department shift employees December 1st changed to be working a 48-96 shift where they work for 48 hours and then they're off for 96. This change was requested by the employees so that they're allowed more of an extended break between their round the clock shifts. And this doesn't impact the town's budget and doesn't increase overtime beyond what they are typically receiving. This week we met with CDC to review the preliminary draft contract for the Allen Street slope failure. Since a portion of the Jackson Paper property was necessary for the repair, the survey and deeds have been recorded with, and CDC was able to file the DEQ permit applications. The permit process takes around 30 days. So Dry Utilities, Frontier, and will start beginning to relocate soon. And then Worcester will start the Teco mesh repair this winter. But dry weather is necessary to do the heavy excavation and soil nail wall construction. So depending on the weather, it could be April or May before those phases start, but we'll start the Teco mesh this winter.
So they can't do the utility relocation until the permit is approved, the 30 day.
They can, and those processes are started.
Okay, so those start, but the
Yeah,
contractor.
the permitting is only for the excavation. And once those are pulled, they'll be good for the duration of the project. The overheads can be done independently of that, and all that is moving currently. Frontier's ordered their replacement cables and poles, and they're just waiting on wire at this point. Got one more tree to bring down for Duke, and then they're gonna be ready to do theirs, because Frontier and Duke are doing a little bit of a different plan there.
Okay, so when the 30 days is up and they get a permit, those will be on their way, I guess, if not done.
I'd like to think that those things will happen. I spoke with Frontier, had an email conversation with Jerry Fisher yesterday. Informed me that the wire had been ordered. They've received our payment already, which was their big hold up. So as soon as that wire gets here, Frontier's gonna start work. And Duke isn't waiting on anything other than just all their paperwork. They have a signed PO contract from us as well. So everything's moving through their internal procedures at this point.
Great, glad to see that finally getting off the ground.
Yes.
Can I just thank Eric for all of your work on getting that piece of land for us.
Yes, and Jake for getting the survey and the appraisal expedited too. The Bridge Park Green Infrastructure Project. We're under contract now with Equinox to conduct the project management, bid package preparation, permitting, and oversight. Our application for the Rural Transformation Grant was submitted the beginning of November. So now we're waiting on the reward process. I think those should be announced December the 16th. And if we're awarded this grant, the project will proceed quickly. Or as quickly as possible. If not, we will need to come to the board and discuss funding. For the depot restroom, WACO, of course, is requiring stamped construction document before they consider our lease. So Odell Thompson and Alex Stillwell are currently working on the architect and engineering stage of the project. Then we'll reapproach WACO for the lease agreement. On the skate park, the internet's been installed and the surveillance camera will be up soon. The delays on this were due to the previously mentioned obstacles with Allen Street, the Christmas parade, and inclement weather. So this will move rapidly in the coming weeks. And I'll be out of the office tomorrow afternoon for the Western North Carolina City County Managers meeting in Asheville, and then I'll also be out on Tuesday. Town Hall, the holidays we're closed are December 23rd, 26th, 27th, and January 2nd. And that's all I have, unless you all have questions.
No question. So how are things come along with the website? I know you met with
Yes, we met with NCI that designed the police department. That was 2 weeks ago. They're starting to we went through several formats of different templates and website styles. And they're working on transitioning our documents and getting better pictures for the new site.
great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Now we will close the report section. Sorry about that, and move on to new business. First up, our audit report. Bronwyn is presenting.
Thank you for making time for us on the agenda. We're bringing to you the finalized audit for fiscal year June 30th, 2022. I know that you all have it came out in your agenda packet, and so you've had some opportunity to look at it. I welcome you to stop me at any point in time. You have questions. I may need to defer some of those questions to that lady on the back row. some of the more detailed questions. As you move through our financial statement packet, well, actually, let me back up first. There was one letter that we issued to you all at the conclusion of the engagement. That is a required communication of us back to you. We work directly with the staff in performing the audit, and the required communication that comes back to you references the engagement letter that was signed. There's a few places in there where we'll talk about some significant estimates that are in the financial statements. We did have a new accounting standard this year. It did not have a significant impact on the town, but it was implemented related to leases. The only lease that you had really that qualified was a copier, police department copier. And so the staff is going to be able to apply a materiality calculation to leases going forward. So that will keep several things like postage meters and those kinds of things are not significant. And so that'll keep those off. But it's just there are several ways that we might communicate to you via letter at the end of the engagement. That is the only thing that is required is the communication that was in your packet. So I'm going to move on to the financial statement packet. I'm going to draw your attention to our independent auditors report, which is just after the table of contents. We did have a new accounting standard in our new audit standard in our world, which rendered a new format for our audit opinions. So for those of you that have been on the board or are on other boards and looking at other financial statements, you'll notice that the format of this changed. The best thing that I think changed is that our opinion is actually the very first paragraph now. And so our opinion states that the town's financial statements are materially correct for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. It's a clean audit opinion, which is what you want. You all know that your staff does a great job. And I'm so sorry about my voice. We had, I don't know, I think that you gave us 2 journal entries. I think that's about all we had, right? Something like that. We very rarely have a journal entry that we make because we found something that needed to be changed. And so there's a little bit more content to the audit opinion, just in identifying management's responsibilities and what our responsibilities are for the audit. Sometimes there's a misconception that when we're auditing something, we're looking at everything, and we don't. We do samples of transactions and things like that. And so in comparing this back to a prior year, you may see some changes. There are a lot of things that have been added to this that were part of our audit process before. It just wasn't referenced in the audit opinion as things that were our responsibility. The required supplementary information and the supplementary information, those paragraphs are remaining the same. The town was subject to what is referred to as a yellow book audit, which was an audit under government auditing standards. So we were required to do just a little bit additional work for your internal control over compliance related to grant proceeds. I am going to encourage you, not all folks just in general get as excited about the details as us financial folks do. And so the management discussion and analysis follows the audit opinion. And I encourage you at a minimum, to look at this. I know you're getting ready to have a budget retreat. And so you all are probably going to be looking at the details a little more closely with respect to that. But the management discussion and analysis is going to give some very high level financial information, very summarized. It is one place that you will see some comparison to prior year numbers. And there's also narrative here that talks about the increases in your fund balance and what generated that. Lynn does the majority of that drafting. I tell her I'll plug numbers in for her, but the narrative and discussing, she and Paige, I think, worked together on that. Just discussing, these were our increases and this is why. And so you're going to see a lot of things as you read through that. There are going to be things that you're going to have recall related to that you've discussed throughout the year. The basic financial statements follows the management discussion and analysis. So that would begin on page 13 of the document, maybe not of the PDF. Exhibits 1 and 2, just as a reminder, these are presented on the full accrual basis. When you all budget internally here, you budget on a modified accrual. So if you have capital outlay, you budget to expend that. And then when the conversion is made from the internal modified accrual to full accrual, we would potentially move that to a capital asset and depreciate it. You're going to also see your long-term debt on the exhibit 1. You're going to also see several line items related to post-employment benefits, retirement plan, the Leo SSA, and healthcare benefits. So I'm going to just kind of move past those because they're not so much what you all look at internally. I'm going to move to page 15, which is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. The major funds are presented separately. And I'm going to make a reference to a page number as we look at this, just so that you can go there later. I actually pulled it up front in my paper copy because I thought we might have some questions here. On exhibit 3, the major funds are presented in detail here. Okay. You normally have general fund and Fisher Creek have been your major funds. This year, the Bryson Park Grant Project qualified as a major fund. Those grant proceeds came in prior to year end and they're sitting in your bank account. And so those dollar limits made that qualify as a major fund. You also have other non-major funds. And those are actually detailed on page 60 of the packet. Okay. And I'm just saying that so if you want to, if y'all are, I probably am not good enough to flip back that quickly to it. But in the non-major fund column, it's your revolving loan fund, public art fund, sidewalk special revenue fund. Your ARPA special revenue fund is there. The Allen Street Landside Capital Project Fund is there. Even though that fund does have $1.4 million of cash sitting there, it wasn't quite to the level to make it a major fund. That will probably not be the case going forward once that gets in full swing. And the Public Restrooms Grant Project Fund is there as well. And a couple of those are new funds, right? The ARPA Grant Project Fund, those funds, that first tranche of money was received in fiscal year 22, and it actually was transferred over into the general fund. So that fund at year end has a zero, at year end 2022 has a zero fund balance. But just in case you want to go, okay, well, where did all these numbers come from? Page 60 is where you'll go to see that. In your fund balance section, the general fund finished with $7 million of total fund balance. Just a little shy of 4.7 of that is unassigned. There are some restrictions in your fund balance that are from outside parties. There are some amounts that are committed in your fund balances for these funds. These funds that are committed by board action here. And then there are some dollar amounts that are actually assigned, and those are assigned by board action, whether it be a budget or whether it be the set aside of monies for, it's primarily those post-employment benefits. Things to note here in the non-major fund area, let's look at Bryson Park. Fund balance for Bryson Park is $3 million. That is specific to grant capital projects. In the non-major funds, there's $245 for grant capital projects. That one is the Public Restrooms Grant Project Fund. You will also see here the $1.423 million for the Allen Street. Now, reminding you that that is a cumulative number. You all have had that fund established for several years and have been moving money over for that. So that's a cumulative number. Just to point those things out to you. I'm going to move on then. Page 16, following that balance sheet, there is a reconciliation of how we get from these modified accrual financial statements back to exhibit 1. And it'll just show you those detailed things that that land over there that are not, that land differently on those front financials than they do here. Exhibit 4 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance. The corresponding supplemental schedule for the other non-major here in this, on this exhibit 4 is actually on page 61. It's going to just follow the other balance sheet if you're interested in looking at that. You can see clearly here the $3 billion for the Bryson Park Fund. The ad valorem taxes, we have a budget versus actual schedule that I'm going to point out to you as well, particular to your general fund, that I think will be a little bit more informative there. The ARPA grant money is in this 686. That's revenue for the non-major funds, and then you actually see that transfer over to the general fund down under the other financing sources and uses. We had an overall increase in the general fund for this year of $891,295. That does include the transfer over of the ARPA funds. The Fisher Creek Fund had just a small loss. The Bryson Park, of course, that money came in very close to year end. There was a little bit interest on it, and so that fund balance is sitting there for that project in this year. The non-major funds had an ending fund balance of 2.1 million. And of course, the most significant of those is the Allen Street landslide. Are there any questions associated with that up to this point? Okay. Following that is a reconciliation again from the net change in the fund balances to exhibit 2, the change in net position. You can see some of those things that are transferring over. You'll be able to see that. Another statement that I think is usually very useful in folks just kind of figuring out, you know, how the year ended, the year results ended, is exhibit 5. It's just the next page, and it's a budget versus actual. So it shows you the original budget ordinance in summary totals that you approved, and then the final budget after all budget amendments were posted, and then compares that to your actual results. The only area of your revenues that did not have a positive result was investment earnings, and that's across all governments that we've audited. If they budgeted $400 in interest income, they might have had 50. So that is not a surprise, I know. You had an increase in your ad valorem taxes, some increase there. There were sales tax increases. The sales tax is in the unrestricted intergovernmental revenues. So, and then you also had conservative spending as compared to budget. And so you can see a little bit better here, how that compares to what you all anticipated it would with your budget adjustments. The Fisher Creek Fund is presented here as well. It's on the next page. We actually, it is printed in the booklets. Actually, I think you all may have the part that gives you the descriptions, but it prints in the book opening like that, if you recall. As we move back into the footnotes, at the further back you go in this financial statement packet, the more detail you're going to find. And so, if you're curious about what makes up capital assets, what makes up restricted cash, on page 23 of the footnotes, there's a detail there that tells you what makes up the restricted cash that is in those various funds. Those restrictions are, based on board actions. Sometimes, like the capital reserves is based on board action. And then the, those external grant dollars that you receive, those dollars are reserved or restricted until you spend them. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights that I think might be of interest. A lot of words, I know. The capital asset footnote is on page 29. That just kind of shows you what detail makes that up. One of the things that you will see here is the construction in progress. and that's related to Allen Street. We had just a little bit get started in fiscal year 21. There was a little bit more this year. But I think what I'm hearing, what I heard tonight is all of those projects are really going to run. So it will sit in construction in progress until it completes, and then we'll capitalize it for that purpose. The top of page 30, we actually give just a little bit of narrative about the leases. As I stated, it was a copier lease for the police department. It really wasn't that significant. And below that begins pages of footnote detail related to the local government retirement, the the law enforcement officer special separation allowance. I have to catch myself. I use those abbreviations, but folks don't always know what those mean. All of these things are subjected to actuarial calculations. And so those numbers are recorded based on the results of those reports. The post-employment health benefits begins on page 38. Like I said, there's several pages related to that. Your long-term debt begins on page 42. There's some good information here as you start to plan for your budget. We do give you some information related to future payments. At the top of page 43, you'll see that with these notes that exist right now, at the end of fiscal year 24, those things are going to get paid off. So that's good. At the bottom of page 43, there's a footnote that talks about the various transfers between funds. And then one thing I did want to point out on the kind of middle of page 44, there's a note here that talks about the total fund balance for the general fund. The town has adopted a fund balance policy. And so this details of the total fund balance of $7 million. What are things that are specifically either restricted, committed, or assigned in that fund balance? How much calculates based on your fund balance policy, which is 2.8 million. And then remaining fund balance is 1.849 million. And so that the 2.8 and the 1.8 equals the 4.6 unassigned that we discussed previously. So I did want to flag that because I know that you all talk about the fund balance quite a bit. We do have just a small reference to, and I just say small because there's not a lot of detail related to it other than reference to the change on page 45 to the fire department. The transition of those employees into the town at July 1st, 2022. It wasn't a subsequent event disclosure. There was nothing quantitative we needed to tell anybody reading the financial statements, but we did tell them that's happening. And so that significantly, changed your budget in fiscal year 23. Your fire department budget became more significant there. And so you'll see that. On page 46, we talked just very briefly in the litigation section about something that Eric, we always communicate with Eric during the audit to say, is there anything legally going on that you need to tell us about? We follow up with him all the way to the date of the financial statements. There was a little something that is out there, but we don't think it's going to have an impact on the town, a material adverse effect on the town. So we just refer to that in very broad strokes. Change in accounting principle, we talked about that with the lease standard. There was no adjustment to prior fund balance. The only subsequent event that we chose to disclose here is the second distribution of the ARPA money. As you recall, in fiscal year 21, we disclosed the first distribution. Following this, you find the required supplementary information is all related to those post-employment benefits. There are individual fund statements and schedules after that. Beginning on page 52, there's a more detailed presentation of the budget versus actual, so that you can see some of those, what makes up unrestricted governmental revenues. I referenced local option sales tax earlier. That was $200,000 above budget which we've seen across all the municipalities that we work with, even the little small guys. We've seen an increase. Most of these are budget versus actual schedules for the capital project funds. Some of these funds have multi-year budgets, they're project ordinances. And so those budget versus actual are going to look just a little bit different. The first one you'll come to is the Bryson Park on page 59. All these numbers are going to look familiar to you all because you approved the budget for them. The last piece of the financial statements that, well, I made reference to the non-major detailed schedule. The last piece that is often interesting to a board begins on page 68. It's page 68 and 69. You all bill and collect your own property tax. A lot of municipalities, actually, the county will do that for them, and you all do that internally here. And so this page 68 actually shows you by year what makes up the ad valorem taxes receivable. You can see beginning balances, collections this year of prior balances, and then of course you see the current year levy and current year collections. This does include the real estate and personal property tax billed locally, and then it does include motor vehicle as well. You can see on the next page a breakdown of the levy, what the original levy was, discoveries, releases, and the tax rate increased this year, this fiscal year 22. And so there is a differential there between the old rate and the new rate in those discoveries. The overall tax collection percentage was 98%, which is very good compared to statewide averages. And then the last report is this is the report specific to the Yellow Book standards that I referenced earlier, that we did have to do just a little bit of extra work on your internal control over financial reporting and compliance it's really related to those governmental grant dollars. So, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Go back to page 47. This is a section I always struggle, kind of page 42 and 47. I struggle to understand it every year, and I know it's very important. It's probably way beyond just my ability to understand it, but the OPEB liability numbers. So when I looked at like on page 42 and 47, I saw some big difference, big differences between 21 and 22 and like the pension liability for the local government retirement system and the LEO, the separation allowance. And then on 47, I'm just trying to understand, so for example, interpreting these numbers on the left, what should I be looking for to kind of gauge whether this is at a healthy status or we need to be contributing more? So it seems to me this bottom number, total OPEB liability as a percentage of covered payroll, has gone up from 78% to 127%. That's a good change.
Tell me what page you're on again.
47.
Is it 47 of your PDF or 47?
No, the bottom number.
Okay.
I just in general always struggle to figure out
Sometimes I do too, so that's okay. Because all of these things are based on actuarial calculations, right? And so they have to make assumptions associated with things. They have to make assumptions of the rate of return. They have to make assumptions of healthcare costs. They have to make assumptions of lots of different things. Sometimes I think it helps to look at that, to look at what actually made up the change that increased the liability, which you can see here. The service cost is what the estimated annual cost would be for retiree insurance. The interest associated with it. You can see a very significant difference here is the difference between the expected and actual experience, I think, which is the expected and actual return. And I think there's a fluctuation there related to the rates of return that they use, what inflation is going to be. this was initially implemented. That's a really good question, but it's also a hard question. So I think these things were initially implemented because while local governments had committed to, or they were, so you're participating in the local government retirement fund, but there was never anything included in your financial statements other than what your annual contribution was, right? And so it's this, particularly with the OPEB, because you all are not setting your money aside in a separate trust, you're setting it aside internally. And so it, based on what your current, so this was as of, Lynn, help me, was this one as of June 30th of 2021? Or did this one value at December 31st? Do you know what I'm talking about, what the valuation date was? Wait, let me look, if you'll give me just a second, let me look at something just really quick at what the valuation date was, because you have to also keep in mind when you're looking at these things, and these are great questions, and I really appreciate it. That these things are not valued. This one was measured at June 30th of 2021. So for these three items that get an actuarial valuation, it can't be valued right at year end. So it's valued within a previous year. So the OPEB is actually valued at June 30th, 2021. And so I think the Leo maybe was December. Is that right? I think that might be right for Leo, that it was December 31st, 2021. And then the retirement is June 30th of 2021. This is really intended just to give you an idea of where you stand. Based on, so if everybody on the books at June 30th of 2021 retired at retirement age, the projected liability as of today is 1.4 million. Do you think that's a fair explanation of how that works? And like I said, they have to use assumptions that they base on statistical data. I think the biggest variable in the OPEB is what's the healthcare cost going to be at that point, right? Nobody knows is the answer to that. I think I have there's a little piece of this footnote that actually.
So total OPEB liability would be,
Right.
you said, if everyone eligible that was eligible for these benefits retired right now.
Right, that your liability today would be 1.419. And it's going to increase every year as it will increase more. The fire department is covered. Are they covered under the health insurance?
Yes.
With the retiree? And so that actually will not reflect in your calculations until June of 24, right? They'll be on, June of 24. So until it's valued at June of 2023, it will not include their payroll cost.
So what explains the dramatic increase then in our OPEB liability over the last 3 years? Like it's gone from 33,000 to 341,000.
I can probably answer that. As you know, we've been planning over the years for a number to retire all at the same time, or around the same time. So we're paying for out. So we're at that point that we've been looking at for a long time. We're at that point now where we have the most or the majority of the ones going to be retiring are on this plan. So it did jump from last year to this year. And we've added more that we're paying that out to within the last year or two.
You actually have more retirees.
Yes, so it did go up, and that.
And if you go back to Exhibit 3, I just kind of skimmed over that when we were in fund balance. So of this 1.49, you all, I'm going to use the word set aside. That's the word I use. It's an internal set it aside. $938,000 you have set aside at this point, but that changes every year. You set more aside.
We've been pretty.
You try to. What is the number? Is it like 150? 150 is kind of what they add to that. So,
and see, we've been money that was set aside, that 150
of that, we're paying out these benefits out of that 150. So it's decreasing what we're putting back.
What the net
What-
change
yeah.
is.
Okay.
But
And we have to rely on all of those actuarial calculations to determine what makes up this overall increase. So basically, in the year that was valued, you paid benefits of 53,638.
Okay.
Do you see that on that page? Yeah.
53, 638.
638, yeah.
Okay.
And
so-
see what Lynn's saying, in 2020, you paid out 25,000.
Right.
And then in 2021, it was 50. This year it's 53.
But wouldn't wouldn't we have to increase that contribution each year by the net change in our liability?
Not necessarily.
no, this is just something we as a town are trying to do. So I feel like where we're at right now. Now, we may need to look at that when we're getting ready for the fire department, because that will make that number go up a lot. So we probably will need to look at that and see, do we?
And that's a component of your budget.
Yeah.
And that you budget for that.
Is that when when the county funded those positions, did that dollar amount just include their salary? Didn't include the cost of the retirement benefits? Imagine we're gonna hand them a number each year and be like, this is the cost of our employees. Should that be factored into it?
It probably included retirement initially. It included benefits. I need to go back and look at that closer.
Well, I don't mean to waste time with this. I know you all
No, you're fine.
understand
It's
that
a
very
good
well, and I
question.
don't necessarily need to.
No, it's a good
That's if you have to handle it. I'm just always curious by this.
Because it's a liability and it's a substantial liability.
And
It-
it grows.
And it's gonna continue to grow.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Because
continue.
mostly what I do when I read this, I really like the section where you compare the numbers to previous years. And
Yeah.
I can look for things that.
Yeah,
sort of
me
stand out.
too. Me too. I like to look for trends. So. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't take too much time. My voice wasn't too terrible to listen to. And thank you for the pop drop.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to point out, I mean, this is good government, the fact that we are able to have a successful audit. Even for a small town like this, you see how much work goes into it and how complex it is. I just want to point out that the Defense Department has failed, I think, all of their audits, and they are unable to account for 61% of their assets. So it makes me proud that our little town is spot on with this.
I'm glad I'm not their auditor. Oh, my goodness. Well, I am going to excuse myself if you don't mind, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Real quick, Leslie, before you leave.
Oh.
So I get nervous when I read these every year because, it's a great time to look at, the trends in our finances and how we ended up doing. And I don't know why I get nervous every year because I'm always incredibly happy with the results, but I get nervous because, since 2020, we've had COVID, which has completely thrown all of our financial predictions into turmoil. We've had a landslide that ended up being the largest expense, largest project we've ever had. We have this fire department transition, this volatile housing market, and it's incredibly impressive to look at these end of year financials and see how well we're doing with our projections on revenues and expenses and how well we're preparing for future expenses. I mean, it really is a phenomenal job that everyone's doing here in regards to these finances. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank
It's very documented.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on. The fiscal year 23-24 budget calendar, which was in our packet. Is anybody, anything you want to say about it? Anyone have conflicts?
First off, does anybody have any conflicts?
I did not.
I would like to mention that I've added I moved the grant spending deadline up 2 weeks. I'm sorry, the year-end spending deadline up 2 weeks. And I moved the grant spending deadline to the end of March so that we are better able to track what needs to be spent by June 30th and what's going to roll over. And I think that should help us as we're making changes to the budget at the end, but also reminding people to spend the grant money before the end of the fiscal year.
So no one has any conflicts. Before we adopt this budget calendar, we've added a discussion of where to make non-budget priorities. I always see our budget planning work session as really a priority planning work session because we do add things to those lists that don't have ramifications for the budget. So maybe we can just make that more clear at that January 26th meeting. Seems like a good place to discuss. We'll begin discussing overall needs that fall outside of the budget. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd be fine. It may be like, okay, now let's talk about some non-budget stuff. Or if it comes up, we can just kind of move it around. But just because, in my experience now, I've done 3 of these, whatever, that we've got a list from previous year that we wanted to fund, things, that didn't get funded, and then we start kind of going over them again. But it always seems like they kind of dominate it, and there are some other things that don't necessarily wind up being budget items, just small things, and it's like it's just a good time. It's a work session. We're all there. I'm fine just to kind of add on some time there, or carve out or just go with that. But just some other things. So I mean, we can come up with another little agenda. I'd like to have like a little agenda. Let's talk about these. These are some of my ideas. Everyone else has some ideas, and then kind of have maybe a little list like we do with the budget priorities, list of non-budget priorities, because we don't keep an ongoing list of that. It's just a sidewalk here or.
Yeah, it would be better to have more cohesive plan for those. So,
And we could do it at the same time. I don't necessarily need a separate session. We're all here, and so we're already.
there's a number that looked good for that. The January 26th one, that one's usually pretty long. That's where we, is that the January 26th one is where we have the boards and put all of our real brain swirling thoughts into it. So we have the March 23rd one, which is another budget planning work session. We also have the council work session on April 27th, which is, which includes us and department heads, finance officer, and town manager. That one in April might be as good a place.
And also the other things. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. That one is to review the draft budget, 27th.
Okay. They're not doing that one. 23rd.
That would just make it longer though.
What if we submitted like requests like this, like we have things that we wanted to talk about that aren't part of the budget. If we submitted that by March the 3rd, and then we could talk about it on the 23rd.
Yeah, because it's also because the budget also is something that happens, our budget, we start July 1st, right? Is our fiscal year starts July 1st, but then our calendar, so I don't want to, we have to wait for these things until that next budget year. Whereas if we started talking about some of these other priorities, we could kind of get rolling on those, and not wait. Yeah, that's why it's got a little bit, it's not tied to money, so it can happen sooner. So that's what I was wondering if we could, I don't know, we could see how things are, we could start up with a little list somehow, see how things go in January, and then if not, what about the March 23 one? Is that usually really long? Or?
No, that one is usually not long. But I'm thinking what I see happening here is we start this, and then there are lots of good ideas that we wish we would have done January 26th. So it might be better to maybe think about staying after the morning meeting in February, doing that. And if there are things that you all decide that you think we should add to that list or modify the rankings, then we could get those costs into the budget for the March and April draft.
I feel like we already, I mean, when we do that January 26th ranking of things, there's plenty on there that's not financially, it doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it. It really is kind of a priorities ranking. Like I just feel like if we are conscious of that on that 26th meeting, well, no, there are things that fall outside of it. Like I think you mean like little details like, which sections of sidewalk need addressing or something like that.
Yeah, or just what's the, where do we want to, maybe a little more directional thing, not quite like a retreat type level, but some little directions, like what do we want to do this year? What kind of things are important to us as a board going forward through this year that we want to move on? And it's tough. It's like I probably should have had a little bit more examples, but like what do we do with certain, what are we going to do with, with Spring Street, half of Spring Street kind of thing, where it's nice to have that discussion there. Like, should we change things around that aren't going to, that might cost Jake more work, but aren't necessarily, tied to a budget. That's one of the things that comes to mind. Or, hey, let's do this. And can we pursue this in a grant type thing? So it's not a budget thing but someone says like, this is really important to me. I'd like to pursue this, some grant funding for this. And then so it doesn't wind up on the budget. Again, it does take up, these are things that would take up time, staff time, hopefully not tons, but these are the kind of things I'd like to think about, because otherwise, a lot of times we'll come up with, let's do this. Okay, but we don't have any money to pay for it. So then let's look for grant funding versus, let's not even try and pay for it. Does that make sense? Just like things that I just feel like it kind of restricts us a little bit.
So kind of rethinking that. So part of this, it sounds like if we try to work this in early on, like in January, right? Like department heads don't know what they're going to need to be working on for the year yet because we haven't approved the budget. And I'm wondering maybe if after the budget is submitted, then our department heads could say, this is my work action plan for the year. Like these are my priorities that you set forth in the budget. And then we can say, hey, maybe we can work in something that's not budget related after we know the workload of staff. I don't know. That's another way to do it is at the end.
Well, I mean, yeah, or we have, like I said, I don't want to necessarily tack on a whole nother work session, but I mean, we could also just be like, let's do 30 minutes of brainstorming.
Let's just add a section at the end of the March 23rd meeting to talk about it. That's a short meeting. And if we feel like we need more time to discuss those or work them in, we can figure it out then. We'll do budget priorities January 26th. Go back over budget priorities after the department heads submit their budget requests on the 23rd, and we can add discussion of non-budget related priorities. That sound good?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Try to come up with a list.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And
Right.
And as far as the work session goes, it's page is pretty wide open too. If someone has an idea if the work session is non-budget related, we can just, we have to, since it's budget work session, does it have to be budget related? I mean, I'm just more for rules kind of thing.
I think I'll think through some parameters, but if you all have ideas of things that you're gonna include, if you don't mind going ahead and sending them to
Yeah.
me, then I can think about the best way to make that meeting flow.
Okay. And I might think a little bit more, because again, I'm just kind of brainstorming here too, but if I think of some other ideas, exactly what I have in mind, then I can just shoot everybody an email too. Cool. Thanks.
So would you need those before the January meeting?
No, I don't necessarily think so.
Okay, I think that wraps up that discussion, right? So now we just need a motion to adopt the budget calendar as it was presented in the agenda packet.
Make the motion to adopt the budget calendars presented in the agenda packet.
Further discussion? Not all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, not opposed. Adopted. All right. Mike, you're up. Fire department personnel request. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Oh, that's all right. I'll hear you there. Well, I'm gonna start off by saying, we've had 1,151 calls this year. Last year we had 762, so that's pretty good. Kind of ties into it. So if you remember back, we had the consultants here and they were talking about projected calls in future years. They were talking about it would probably go up by 150 years, a little more than that, but in this year. And that ties into what I want to talk about next, which is a personnel increase. What I'm going to ask y'all, you just give us permission so we can approach the county about this idea. What we're looking at is probably at least a year out. 2024 is what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to hit you up on the first year or anything like that. And if you look at our budget, as it currently is, we did have two truck payments in it. We paid one of those trucks off. And I want to use that money along with the money that the county is currently paying on the building to enable us to increase our personnel staff by 3, which would add a person each shift. Like I say, I know the county's not paid the bill off yet, so it contingent on that. And of course, y'all got to give us permission so we can go talk to the county about that. In other words, what I want to do is just leave the money in the budget that's already there. And that will be paid off. And so if we do that, we'll still be about 40,000 short if we're going to for that. Which would be, not too bad. 20 apiece, say 20 from now, 20 from man. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there right now. Like I said, this is very preliminary. But what that'll enable us to do, that will increase our staffing, which will enable us to make our effectiveness more when we go on these calls. A lot of the time, like we said before, volunteers are getting harder to come by. Because a lot of the employers won't have leave. They have a job. We do a few of that at night when they're not working on that kind of thing. And that's kind of what we got to look at in the future. And I figure now's a good time to start. Like I said, what I'm looking at probably is maybe implementing this probably in July of 24. Something like that, maybe even January 24, somewhere in 24 probably. So I'm not asking to do it tonight. So I'm just asking for permission so we can go talk to the county commissioners and see if they're be interested in doing that.
So we have how many, 9 or 11 right now? Huh?
8,
8, right, that's it, 8. And so this is one of the things we're pushing for at the get-go, or more, yeah. So you want to.
We'll be right where we was trying.
Yeah, exactly. So what makes you think that they're gonna go for it now, where they weren't gonna go for it before?
For one thing, not $150,000 more.
Yeah,
Free than head.
yeah, okay. Got it.
That's what I'm saying. That's basically what the payment is. I don't know if that's the exact dollar amount, but it's in that range. So the truck is paid off and our truck is the ladder truck.
So we were paying for that.
Well, no,
So
it's,
You were paying
liabilities
for
on
that.
our books, but isn't the county reimbursing us
No,
the cost of that truck each year?
no.
All of the building.
Only the bill.
No, the trucks are ours.
Right.
Okay.
We've always paid for them.
Do we have longevity in our vehicles?
Well, that's another point I was about to make. Knew that question was gonna come up. Okay, currently we still have, like I said, we had 2 truck payments in there. We're still paying for a pumper, which is 364, the Southern pumper, the newer one. And the goal is we're going to replace the truck. Well, that pumper will be paid off by that time. And then we can use that payment to buy the other truck with to keep our trucks up.
Right, so you, like, our truck payment would just continue, even though, because we're just moved on to a new truck, right?
On
Is that
on
what you're
one
saying?
truck, yes.
Yeah, on the one truck. So those wouldn't really free up for more For more firefighters, right?
One of them would, because we've already paid it out. And
But-
the
okay.
money's currently in the budget. If we just took money out of the budget, when we bought the truck. To pay the pay.
Right, but when are we gonna need to buy another truck? Like, so we're paying off 2 trucks right now?
One of them is paid out.
One of them, we just finished off, we just made our last payment or?
Like end of the year, but.
In June, right, okay, gotcha. So we're paying off now one truck,
One truck, we own one truck right now.
and how much more do we have? When will that be paid off?
I think it's next year.
Next year,
5,
okay,
4, 5.
but then you're gonna need to replace a truck,
Yeah,
and so then we're gonna have this other payment, so basically the payment's gonna continue. It's not like,
on,
okay,
on the one truck,
on the one truck.
right.
When does the building get paid off at the counties?
3 more payments, so the end of next year.
Okay,
Right, now I'm talking about.
The end of next
Yeah.
year. Okay, so you're way that you want to wait until that payment. How big is that payment?
That's the 150 we're talking about.
Okay, that's the 150.
but then are we gonna need another truck after that? Like, so you envision us needing just one more truck?
Let me explain how that.
Yeah. Like, we're gonna need more trucks, it's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
Right.
The truck's 20 years old. And they ain't not 20 years old, you got the option, you can either refurbish the truck, which is the custom truck that you work doing.
Mhm.
Or your conventional cab trucks, you replace it, cost more to refurbish it, and it doesn't buy one. But when they age out 20 years, you're supposed to replace them. Keep your rate.
Mhm.
And right now, we're not all that bad off right now. Say 64 is 2016 model. We got a little time on that.
Mhm.
The next one we'd have to replace would be 354, which it is 2001, so it's about that time.
Okay.
But by doing what I'm talking about, we'll be all right because they're all still through the truck. But we can take that payment that we're now making on 64, that's what I'm talking about, be paid off to buy the new truck with. And then the payment we just paid off, the truck we just paid off, we use that money in the personnel budget.
In the personnel budget, yeah, okay, I'm just getting at like when, like. At some point in time, like, so right now we're good on trucks, but at some point in time, how are they staggered? Is it staggered where we're just gonna have to get
Yeah.
one truck, or is all of a sudden, at some point in time, we're gonna need 3 trucks?
The way we're
Because
laid out
3 are
right-
coming
the
up.
way we're laid out right now, we should just about find out.
Okay, continuously, okay, yeah, that's good.
So back a few years back, say 25 years ago,
Uh-huh,
we ended up in a situation where Sylva didn't have a truck during 1969. That was in '9.
mhm,
So we had to buy a bunch of trucks.
gotcha,
We don't really want to get into that.
but now we have a good, like, kind of replacement
Yeah.
schedule, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
What I'm asking you, I would like to say, if you'll just give them a 7-page commission, approach the county manager and the county commissioners about this with the idea of looking at 2024, probably implement sometime in 2024.
Prior to budgets, that's an appropriate time to do.
Yeah, what I want to do basically is try to get a commitment out of them if they want to take that money out.
Creative finance.
What's going to
When's the ladder truck reach its 20 years?
2012. So it'll be 32.
All right, you need a vote to enter discussions or just?
and it's, so how much is it, like, how much are the payments a year for the trucks?
Well, that truck payment,
Yeah,
it was 38,000.
per year,
Yes.
okay, and then the truck, the pumper truck,
And we're paying for, top of my head, it's somewhere around 35.
okay, so would you say that's kind of average, most trucks are somewhere in that range?
Yeah,
30,
but
40?
you also got to factor in something else, which I don't know how we calculate this out, we're not there yet. But the price of trucks are probably,
Oh, yeah.
like everything else, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly, but,
I'd be amiss if I didn't say that.
no, of course, but I'm just trying to get an idea.
The discussions you want to have with the county aren't about town of Sylva's financing of anything. This is moving the money that they're contributing
Well,
for the
yeah,
building payment.
like I
to
say,
the-
you always have money in it, but when you already got our way.
Yeah.
Same with them, money they're already getting. So just change what it's spending, I guess, the way to look at it.
Either a vote to have those discussions or just consensus?
Either one, I think is fine.
We'll take a motion. So we need a motion to allow Paige and Mike to have discussions with the county over the additional, proposing additional employees for 2000.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Thank you.
Sure. All right. And while you're standing there, can I just ask a separate question? Are you able to parse out your calls, medical calls versus fire calls,
Yeah.
fire or accident?
We're working on that.
Okay.
Hopefully by the first year, I'll have that.
Oh, good.
It's a little
Okay.
bigger deal than. You
Yeah,
gotta go back to the book after book, the hard copies and you have somebody sit there. and follow it.
yeah, it doesn't have to go. I mean, I'm more concerned, like, just, moving forward versus,
We haven't got it.
yeah.
So first year, you should have that.
Can't you not get them from dispatch for which calls were the fire department? Over something? No. It was just all.
They just go first responders.
Well, what it does is it's all, as far as dispatch is concerned, it's a fire call. We make a report on it, and on that report, it tells you whether it's a medical call or a fire call or a car wreck or whatever it was. Well, that's kept out here. So we have to go through their books to find that. And, but now we have started a program, and that's the reason I think we'll have this first year.
Great, awesome.
Whereas we do these reports, we're numbing them out, so we know
Yeah.
what we do, because used to it didn't matter, we just sent them all the paper,
Yeah. No, but I mean, with the way things are going, Narcan calls and stuff like that,
That's
and,
right.
medical calls and stuff. Yeah, because that might be something to look at in the future too. Send. I know you all usually show up in the truck, the pickup truck first, but want to make sure we're not like, sending a pumper truck to an overdose or whatever.
And again, get paid.
Oh, I know,
We don't
that's
know
what
what it is.
If we have the numbers, maybe we're able to kind of come up with a system, but maybe not, but in order to kind of start to do something.
For example, like on the wreck, I would be for wreck.
Yeah, for
So we
sure.
don't want them to get that.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing, maybe a whole lot.
Yeah.
Same with a fire call. That's why, we have a fire at such and such address. You get there and it might be nothing, and it might be a whole lot.
Yeah,
It's something
yeah.
you just don't know, you get there. Usually on first responder call, the pickup truck call, right?
Right,
Or
okay.
one of the other ones.
Yeah.
whatever they do.
And just going back to personnel too, do we need more? If those are the calls you're getting, first responder calls, do we need to, look at,
Well, you-
more first respond, increase the first responder response kind of thing, 'cause
Got some that's right now finished with EMR class. They would actually be 100 first responders. We also got, two guys that have finished firefighter certification. And one guy finished the EMT class last week.
Cool.
So we're trying to move up, but you're talking about number of people in the call and, being a doctor, I'm gonna bring this one up. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
When we have a code, you know what code is.
Yeah,
I don't know if the rest of them do or not, but that's when somebody's heart stops. Okay, when you got a code, you can't get enough people doing CPR and everything else, because we're out in the field, And that's one reason we all go, because we don't know what we're gonna run into. And if somebody gets there and sees it's not that much of a big a deal, we usually call back and the rest of them. Just something they don't know.
yeah. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Yep. Okay, moving down the list. Cancel the December 22nd, 2022. Board of Commissioners meeting.
Votorama for this. Okay, I'll make a motion that we cancel December 22nd Board of Commissioners meeting.
You can motion all these things.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Signify by raising your hand.
All right,
None opposed, motion carries. Moving on, cancel the December 22nd planning board meeting.
motion we cancel December 22nd, 2022 Planning Board meeting.
Discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand.
Say aye.
Not opposed? Passes. And scheduling the holiday lunch for December 15th. Details.
At noon.
At noon.
Someone else want to do it? No, I'll take it.
Go for it.
All right, I motion we schedule the holiday lunch for December 15, 2022
At noon.
at noon.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Very disappointed that I'm going to have to miss that because I'll be out of town.
Issue.
Okay, last item on the agenda. I need a motion to go into closed session and please.
Oh,
read
we
the
actually don't need that closed session, I don't think, do we?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hey, striking that from the agenda. There's only one more motion that I need then.
I motion to close the meeting. Right.
All those in favor?
Say aye.
Meeting is closed.
Thanks.
I'm not thinking.